we're going to go through the best horse for you in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. There are a few considerations, so we're going to go through those. And then once we've gone through the horses that I think will be best suited for the person that wants a horse for each role, we'll go through how to get the best gear or to get the best out of your horse, because there's a lot that we can actually do to manipulate the stats of our steed. First of all, for some very specific horses, I need to bring your attention to Malashov, which is down in the south. We can find two pretty good horses for two very specific roles. The first one is Erdl, and this is just if all you use your horse for is as mobile storage. This is the highest storage capacity in the game. It also has very high courage, which means if you want to use it as a battle horse as well, you will be able to fight on it. It just won't be incredibly fast. Not a bad pick. It's mobile storage and able to fight, so really not the worst in the world, in my opinion, if that's what you want it for specifically. The next good one is if you don't care about that storage and you want an actual battle horse that can move, and that is Castana right here. This actually has the highest combination of courage and speed, which are actually the two stats that are hardest to balance, in my opinion. So getting those maxed out on this horse is very nice, but as you can see, to balance this horse out, what they've done is they've taken all of its capacity away. So this will literally just be a horse for fighting on or racing on and not really much more. So if you want a fast horse that you can do all of the fighting on, this is the one that you're going to want to pick up. If you don't mind putting a bit of work in, you can come to the north of Belani. It's probably the closest fast travel point. You can see if you come south of this caravan remains here on my map, we have the enemy camp just ahead where we can take out the bandits. Once the bandits around here are dealt with, we will find here that we have the meadow horse. This is a bit of a trade-off with Erdl that we looked at before, but I think overall comes out slightly better, mostly because of the increase in speed and the increase in stamina that we get for only about 10 capacity and a little bit of courage, which we can mitigate with gear, as you guys will see later on. To make the horse yours then, you'll need to bring it to the horse handler. So we go ahead, we speak to this guy, where we can head into the black market and we can select to acquire the horse. As you can see from my map, this is directly to the west of the Kutenberg fast travel point here, and you can find him very clearly on the road. The last horse that I want to talk about is Pisek Lad. We get this horse from the horse trader that is in Kutenberg. I like this one because, as you can see here, it has the most balanced stats across the board, and not only balanced stats in terms of stamina capacity and speed, but also a very nice starting point for courage at 23. This is important because if you want to get into battles or when you're getting ambushed, you don't want to be getting thrown from your horse all the time, and that is where horses like Pebbles and Herring don't do very well. I know people are attached to Pebbles from the previous game, but the reason and the thing that lets Pebbles down, unfortunately, is that even with the perk that you can get with Pebbles, the courage of Pebbles is still only 12, and even Herring only gets 14. So the two horses that we can ride around for hours to improve, in my opinion, still don't actually beat Pisek Lad in most of the areas that it's good in, especially as Pebbles comes out even with it in carry capacity. It's only got like 15 more stamina and we're getting 14 more courage for that trade-off. The speed is the same, so we don't have to walk around with it for ages. I think overall Pisek Lad is the best all-rounder horse that we can do pretty much anything with. As for the best gear, I have two places you need to visit. Most of the best gear is in Kutenberg, including the horseshoes, but if you want to pick up a set of racing shoes for free, if you head back to Sukdal right here and then follow the road out to the north, come to the watering hole, you'll find a bag around this little camp, and in there is one set of racing horseshoes for your horse, which is an instant +5 to the speed of your horse. This actually completely offsets having the heaviest saddle on, so if you start at 55 speed, you put those on, you're going to end up back at 55 speed again. Now, I of course don't have them on me right now because I needed to make sure they were there so they could do it for the recording. If you've gotten that set of shoes and you have traded your horse in and you traded it with that set of shoes on or whatever else has happened, you can come over to this table right here. So if you look at me on the map, you can see I'm right next to where the horse trader is. There'll be a sheet of paper on this table right here, and that is going to give you the sketch to be able to make your own racing horseshoes. which means if I just take my knight horseshoes off, we just assume that the speed would be 5 higher, and then we can proceed to talk about the best gear to be putting on your horse and some considerations that you might want to take into account depending on what it is that you're doing. And in my opinion, because Pisseklad has such a good spread of stats, we're able to do almost anything with Pisseklad, which is what makes him so good. So for example, if we were racing, I could put on a fairly minor saddle just so it doesn't look like I'm riding a naked horse, put on a tournament bridle, and then add the racehorse shoes to end up at 60 speed, which is the maximum. The maximum courage is 30. So we could, if we wanted to, change over the Chanfron, add on a caparison, and if we don't mind being a little bit lower on speed, we can very easily max out our courage. And then, of course, I'm sure everybody knows the bigger the saddle you put on, the better your carriage capacity is going to be. There are 2 classes of saddle. There's the Krakowian and the Dragon. They're both basically the same, but look a bit different. Just bear that in mind when you are selecting your gear, if you're doing it based on stats and carriage capacity is something that you're targeting. In this instance, then, I personally like to have the Krakowian saddle on. On the torso, I actually like to have the fairly low-level Wylan harness. This is because as we get heavier, you'll find that it starts really digging into your speed, and this is why different horses might fit different people slightly differently, okay? So as you see, when I'm taking this on and off, we're losing 3 speed to gain an additional 20 carry capacity and 2 courage, and I think that's an okay trade-off. Now, some of the other stuff is pretty good as well. So the quilted caparison with harness, you can see, gives quite a lot of courage and quite a lot of capacity as well, but it really starts digging into your speed, gets you down to 46, and that's not really what I want. I quite like the idea that we can put those shoes on and end up at speed 55, so we're at an unburdened speed effectively, and we still have great capacity at 558, fairly good courage at 25, and a decent amount of stamina to work with, which just allows us to, in general, have a fairly nice setup with the horse. Of course, if you're going to be going into battle, for example, I do think I prefer to have on the Tyrolean Chanfron, and that is not because it's the highest armor. The actual highest armor is the Dragon Chanfron, but the Dragon one looks absolutely terrible, and I refuse to wear it, so that's just never going to go on my horse. In terms of the bridles, you should be, if you're going into battle, go with the Tyrolean, in my opinion, just so it looks nice and is giving your horse some armor. If you want to have the speed, go with the tournament bridle because that's the fastest. As to where we can get all of these best pieces of gear, then they're actually all in the same area. We know that we can get the sketch for the racehorse shoes right here from the horse trade. It's not even stealing, it just lets you pick them up. So go ahead and get that and you can make your own, or as I said before, go and pick the ones up that are over in the camp. Once that's done, you can basically visit any of these shops that are in the area and they all sell, or you can take light-fingeredly the loot that you want to use on your horse. And each of the stores sells something fairly relative to horses and their trade. So for example, the saddler here sells your saddles, such as we said before, the dragon saddles and the Krakowian saddles. The blacksmith behind him sells even more saddles and bridles. And I think I've made my point, but one that I do think we should show is that this tailor right here is where you are going to find most of the comparisons. So if you're bothered about those drapings that go over your horse, this is where you're going to get a lot of your fashion.